Coucou mes amis, hi, it's Alexis talking to you about all things TAPIF. This video is again one I'm making actually newer, so I'm making it this summer, 2019, August of 2019, and I'm talking about something Gabrielle had asked me to discuss, which had to do with living alone and the pros and cons of living alone versus living with somebody while you're doing the TAPIF program. I feel like my camera is like a bit wonky, so hoping that's a bit more straight. We'll see. Whatever. Either way, it's okay. So, of course, I'll go into a couple general pros and cons of living alone versus with roommates. I've had about, this is going to make me sound bad, I've had about 10 roommates since, like, including college, in my life, because I'm 28 now. So I've lived with about 10 people altogether, and half of them are, like, my best friend, or, like, one became my best friend, met her off of Craigslist, and a few others are like really close and I still talk to weekly, and then others I kind of truly hate, and then some I'm just like indifferent to, like some we just grew apart, and it was actually pretty, like all my college ones were actually pretty great while they lasted, but just were, you know, like done after that. But so I feel like I've had a decent experience. I did live alone technically, I guess. I lived in a single senior year. I am an only child. I like to just be me. I'm totally fine being alone, but I also do really like living with people, so I get both aspects. And now I lived alone while I was in France, throughout TAPIF. So I know a little bit of both worlds, but definitely as an adult, living with, you know, roommates has been largely what I know in the States. I lived in Arlington for 4 years, and I always lived with two other girls, with two roommates the entire time I was there. So that's mostly what I know. So I'll talk about general pros and cons. Pros of living alone, because I'm basing it off of living alone. So here are the general pros of my opinion on living alone. It's just, of course, it's just you. It's you. You only have to worry about you, your habits, I guess what you deem is clean and what doesn't bother you. Like personally, like I like, when it comes to kitchens and food or anything like that, I like it to be really clean, but like I leave my clothes strewn about and I leave that stuff everywhere, and I'm not really tidy when it comes to that. So it's really great when you're living alone because it's just you. However, you also have to kind of keep yourself in check. So if you do live alone, you also have to kind of be up your own butt, making sure that you're doing everything tidily. It's kind of why I was always raised that if you're having guests over, everything's like deep clean. So I did kind of like inviting people over so that it did hold me accountable with keeping stuff clean. Another big thing about living alone is like then you're not fighting about bills or payments. You're not fighting with your roommates about, you know, who took the trash out last, any of that stuff that can kind of cause tension, which, you know, kind of like, yeah, I didn't really want it was only such a short period of time. I didn't really want tension in all of that time. Cons though of living alone of living alone is that, you know, personally I really like sharing my clothes and stuff, and like I like having people to get ready with, and so it is kind of annoying when you don't have any second opinion there, or you're like, oh, can I borrow that black shirt of yours? Like I loved doing that. I did that a lot with my roommates, so that I really missed. I missed not getting ready and kind of just having that fun girl time. And then you also don't have anybody to talk to at the end of the day. You don't have anybody to kind of share your day with, which is even harder to do because you are in a different time zone than everyone you love when you're in France. So that is kind of hard. When you go home, you can't decompress and talk to anybody, and that can be frustrating. Also, you have nobody, and this goes for wherever you are, to fight with your landlord or anything like that with you. Like if you have a crappy situation and it has to do with your landlord or your property manager or something, it's just you taking them on. You don't have any backup. So now diving more into TAPIF, specifically living alone. Now I'm gonna go actually a bit into what exactly my situation was. So I was living alone in a studio. I had my own entrance, but it was technically a studio in someone's house. So it was on the ground floor. The family had two studios that they would rent out. I think they never rented out the other one because they were doing construction on it like the whole time I was there. I think they had a friend or friends, or like maybe when their friends visited they stayed there. But in the time I was there, no one was like living there. It was just used, I think, maybe as an Airbnb every now and then. So I lived in their ground floor studio, and they had the top 2 floors. They had the first floor and the second floor where they lived on. And it was a really nice, very spacious house, and they let me, I felt awkward, I didn't really go up to it very often, but they did let me go up to their like terrace. They were like, oh, it's fine to do terrace, you can use the terrace to dry your clothes on and stuff like that whenever you need. But I tried to limit it, but I tutored the boy that lived there. And that was nice. And I could, so there's 2 entrances. I had my own entrance, and then I could also walk into their house. And it locked on my side, so in a way it was actually more creepy for them, I suppose, than for me, because they couldn't come in if I had the lock on my door, but I could go into their place and just walk upstairs and tutor him, which was really like nice and easy access and a lovely commute. So I was still not fully alone in many ways, and I think that's why it worked really well for me, because I still had people that were living right there. I wasn't like, I kind of, safety-wise, I liked that, you know, if I went missing, someone would know, or if I screamed, hopefully someone would hear, stuff like that. The con though also about the ground floor was that sometimes when people would walk by, it felt like they were there in my apartment with me, especially, it didn't happen often, but every now and then you'd get, you know, like a 3 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up call from somebody drunkenly stumbling home, and that was like, I one time legit thought someone, and they were like yelling, and I was legit thought someone was like in my apartment, and my heart was like beating so fast for a while. But yeah, so that was what my situation was exactly. And I had like a washer, I had my own bathroom, I had my own little kitchenette area. It wasn't very large. It was like 2 stovetop and then a, I guess, heavy duty microwave oven, because a lot of them use that. So that was interesting. Now kind of getting into more things. So pros of living alone to TAPIF. I liked it because it was also short term. It was, I don't think I could live alone for a long time, but it was only 7 or 8 months, whatever it was. And I had come out of actually a pretty bad, it didn't just end, but I came out of a pretty bad roommate situation. We had let this girl move in with us because we were desperate, because it was a really bad time to find a roommate, and she was legitimately like psychotic. Like, we went to the police. Like, me and my roommate went to the police to talk about her and to see if they had any suggestions, and like asked what we could do and like what legal rights we had. So not like, I don't overreact a lot to things, but my safety and stuff like that, like we put locks on our doors and stuff because it got so extreme. Like, it was horrible. So I had a really traumatic experience like right before I went to TAPIF. So I was like, if I can live alone, I would like to live alone. That was a big selling point for me. And I don't think I could do it like long term again. But I liked that it was short term, and I kind of didn't want the stress. I knew it was short term, so part of me was like, well, if I had to live with somebody and it doesn't go great, at least it's only 7 months. Another part of me was like, it's only 7 months. I'd rather just enjoy it. So that being said, there were definitely cons with my apartment. I was cold all the time. But I didn't have a crazy roommate trying to murder me, so that was nice. Another con, you do have to kind of force yourself to go, which is a pro and con. Because you're not living with anybody, because nobody is there to plan things with you, you really have to put yourself out there with your other assistants, locals, things like that. Like, you need to really kind of get yourself out there. I was lucky too with the fact that my landlord and stuff, like, I got really close with the family, and they would invite me to go to things. Like, I went hiking with them, I went to like a couple operas with them, because he sang, like the boy sang in operas, and I just did a bunch of stuff with them, and like there was a lot of really great cultural things in French cities. Like, we went to Avignon. It wasn't that big, but they had so many cultural activities and stuff that went on throughout the year, like even in the dead of winter. And so it was really great, and I would recommend in general just doing that, because it was amazing. There were so many more things than I've ever seen in a US city that just seemed manageable and easy to do, and not, you know, overwhelming or anything like that. So that was, I felt like I kind of had my own like ambassador in the city, and I was really lucky with that. Other cons about living alone during TAPIF. One, my situation was a little bit unique with the rent and I didn't have to worry about signing up for like cable or internet or any of those things, and I do think a lot of the studios you do have to do that for, which is what deterred me originally from getting a studio, because I just like, I don't want to have to worry about setting up internet, which you might have to if you live with people anyway, but at least you both can call Vodafone or Free or whatever it is together, versus alone. So I think that was kind of a bit of a deterrent for me originally with the idea of living in a studio, and then this situation just worked out really well. Other cons, there's no support system. There's no support system that you're coming home to. Kind of like I said, you can't, when you come home, you don't have anybody to decompress to and tell your day about, which really does amazing things. Like, I loved that. I loved having, sometimes I would immediately beeline it to my bedroom and like my old apartment and just like be alone, because I need to do that. Like, I'm more of an introvert with where I get my energy from. So I liked that, but also I really like to be able to like, oh my god, I had the craziest day, blah blah blah. That was really nice, and you don't have that. So you don't have kind of a support system, and anybody helping you like that. And also being said with landlords and situations like that, like if you're living alone, you're not going to have anybody to fight with you. And when you're in France, speaking a foreign language, things like that, it is nice to have somebody else in your corner that you can, it's not just you fighting the battle about like, no, this was damaged before we moved in kind of thing. Also, if you, the con, you don't have any built-in friendships, which granted, any situation when you have roommates, you can't rely that on the fact that you guys are going to become best friends. Like, totally possible it might not happen, but at least, you know, you might have the opportunity to do things together, especially in the beginning. Kind of, you're like, hey, you want to go grab a coffee? Hey, do you want to go grab a drink at the pub? Things like that. And that's both with a TAPIF person or a French person. All the apartments I looked at were actually living with French people, which would have been really cool, and I think actually is great, and a lot of TAPIF people did that. Like, I know a few TAPIF people who lived with fellow TAPIFers, a few other people who lived with locals. And I think both are great, because TAPIF, you know, you have somebody else who's dealing with the same issues with you, so you guys can handle that together and stuff. And then when you're living with locals, like, you can meet people and just, yeah, get out there and really get, and also improve your French and kind of have somebody, a nice French person batting in your corner, which is really wonderful. So I am jealous. I will say that if anything, I'm jealous of that. Like, I'm jealous of the relationships that people got to form because of that. And I think that's really it. Living alone was the right choice for me. I'm glad I did it. I was also really close with a couple people whose apartments I was over a lot, especially my one friend, like McKenna and Susanna. Like, they lived together. They were both in TAPIF. And it was great. Like, I was over their apartment every week and a few times a week. So that was wonderful, because I still didn't feel like I lived super, super alone. It worked for me. It was great for me. I definitely wouldn't say it's for most people, because it is. You're going to have to handle being alone a lot. And when you're going through this kind of crazy experience that's already stressing you out, that might not be great for your mental health and whatnot. But if I hadn't had the traumatic experience in the States that I had just had, I probably wouldn't have been so gung-ho about a studio and been like, yes, I think this is the right choice for me. And it was also a really great studio. Everything was furnished really lovely. I thought it was beautiful, and I was excited. And I've been really spoiled with getting shockingly nice apartments over the years. So I was like, well, this was nice. But yeah, I think just trust your gut. Trust your, if you're really close to, like, I'm really close to my parents. I was kind of listening to them, and they really thought this was the best. Like, they had a much better feeling. We're all pretty intuitive people, the three of us. So we all felt that this was the right choice for me, and I think it was. It worked out really well. Again, there were some cons, like, specific to my living situation, but I think very specific to me. That's not probably going to happen to anybody else, with like heating issues and noise issues and things. But yeah, trust your gut. Don't, when you are looking at places, don't settle immediately. I almost did that, which I talked about in the other video. Just keep looking a little bit. Don't freak yourself out immediately and be like, oh my god, this is the only option, blah 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 blah. You'll be fine. You'll find the right place. Worst comes to worst, if you have friends, like, you can, I'm sure, one time something happened, I had a pipe burst or something, so I had to spend a night over at my friend's place. Like, like you have friends and stuff there, or you will have friends and stuff there, or at least people in your community. I don't think anyone ever like turned anybody away. I don't know, that could have happened, but especially if you're like, just try to really get a good crew that'll back you up if anything happens. And if not, there's always Airbnb and hotels, worst comes to worst, if you need to do something like that. But I ended up staying actually an extra few weeks, and I didn't want to pay for my apartment, so I actually got an Airbnb for like a week or something in Avignon, just the way it worked out, which is fine. But oof, my God, I packed so much. I needed to buy another suitcase. It was a mess, but that is another story. So hope this helped. Hope it gives you some clarity and some ideas on what you'd prefer and how you prefer to live. Again, a Protégé is the website I really use, but that didn't have any studios, I don't think, on it, so I'd recommend a Protégé. Or Le Bon Coin, which had more studios, but were hard for me to originally find, so you need to kind of search for them and find the right filter materials, like, to look for it. And then also, in Avignon specifically, there was like this elderly group that matched up younger people with older people, so you could like live in their houses, and some people I think had like houses that were semi-attached and stuff, which I did look into, but it was just too complicated. However, they did start contacting me on a Protégé, and if they had contacted me earlier, I think maybe I would have considered it, because like, old people are fine, I'm down with them. It just like didn't pan out that way. So things to consider. Just, yeah, don't be afraid to look for like local deals or like local things that are going on. Okay, well, good luck, bon chance, bisous.